than other vegetarian or vegan diets that it's kind of usually lumped together with when people think of a plant-based diet, because it actually encourages the avoidance of dairy. It also encourages the avoidance of refined grains and added sweeteners, processed foods, and things like that. It also allows for small amounts of animal products if that's indicated for the patient. Another important distinction of a nutrient-dense plant-rich diet is that it's not a low-fat diet. Whole food sources of fat are actually included in the diet, and they're actually encouraged, and that's because the literature shows that whole food sources of fat, such as nuts, are actually cardioprotective, which is really important for our diabetic patients when cardiovascular disease is such a great risk for them. So a quick shout out to the nature care enthusiasts and history buffs in the room. I'm looking at you, Dr. Nick. Henry Lindlar is one of our naturopathic forefathers, and he cured his own type 2 diabetes with a plant-based diet. And it was this experience, or part of this experience, that kind of inspired him to pursue medicine. So we should all be very grateful for a plant-based diet, even if we don't follow it. So there's a lot of evidence in the literature that supports plant-based diets for both the prevention and management of many chronic diseases, including diabetes. And this study that was just published in PLOS Medicine just a couple months ago was particularly interesting to me. It pulled data from over 200,000 participants from the Nurses' Health Study, the Nurses' Health Study 2, and the Health Professionals Follow-Up Study. And they looked at how likely these 200,000-ish people were to develop type 2 diabetes over about 20 to 30 years. And the researchers split these 200,000 participants up into groups based on their diet. And these 200,000 participants all followed a quote-unquote plant-based diet, and then they split them up into further groups of those types of diets. So what they did was they said group 1 is a vegetarian diet, kind of like a standard vegetarian diet. It's high in refined and processed foods like cereals, pasta, desserts, sweetened beverages. Group 2 is a diet that many of us might consider to be well-balanced. It's really high in fruits and veggies, but it also includes some sources of animal products. And group 3 is a nutrient-dense plant-based diet that's pretty similar to the diet that we put our patient on. And what they concluded was that in an unhealthy vegetarian diet, so that first one, that's really high in added sweeteners and refined foods, so it's here in red, and it increased participants' risk of developing type 2 diabetes at the end of the study by about 16%. However, both the plant-based diet with some animal products, which is in blue, and the nutrient-dense plant-based diet, both of those had an inverse association with type 2 diabetes. They both lowered the patient's risk of developing diabetes. The version that had some sources of animal product actually decreased participants' risk by 20%, and the healthiest diet that was examined was the nutrient-dense plant-based diet in green, and that decreased it by 34%. So that's really impressive, and it speaks to the long-term effects that these different diets can have in relation to the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Now, when we talk about implementing dietary changes for patients, especially in this case when it was the main treatment, it's really important to keep in mind the effect that these changes are going to have on patients' quality of life. How feasible is it going to be for these patients to stick to it long term? Are they going to feel worse, or are they going to actually want to stay on it? And so I liked this study because quality of life following dietary interventions is exactly what it sought to measure. And so the outcome of this study showed that compared to a conventional low-carb American Diabetes Association style diet, the plant-based diet was easier for participants to adopt long-term, and patients reported improved mood, better satiety, better quality of life, and they felt like they were less likely to binge or feel hungry compared to the conventional group. And so keeping this research in mind, that not only does a nutrient-dense plant-based diet actually have favorable outcomes for diabetic patients, but that this dietary approach is also doable long-term, let's check in with Lori. So overall, she's doing amazing. We're really, really excited for her. We just saw her this week for her 9-month follow-up. So you'll see here her initial weight and then the weight that she's lost. She's lost a total of 66 pounds so far in 9 months. Her blood pressure is continuing to decrease. It's getting closer and closer to that ideal 120/80. Her fasting blood glucose was in the average of 170s when she first came to us, and it's now down to a normalized 82. Her A1C, same trend. It was a 7.4% when we first saw her, and it just keeps coming down and staying normalized now at a normal non-diabetic 5.4%. And so she's considered no longer diabetic after just 9 months. And her cholesterol is also improving. So Lori's also noticed that she has better sleep, she feels more energetic during the day, and not surprisingly, she just is enjoying her life quite a bit more right now. And there's not a single medication or supplement on the market that can reverse diabetes as quickly as a good nutrition overhaul can. We're really excited by Lori's progress, but going back to that point that I made that the leading cause of death for diabetics is actually heart disease, it's important to keep in mind what the long-term effects of any diet are, specifically in relation to cardiovascular health for these patients. So is this plant-based diet that we have Lori on going to be safe and beneficial for her and her heart long-term? And so this study took a look at exactly that question. So the study, or the pictures on the far left, show the coronary arteries, and it's showing blood perfusion. And so typically we might think that red means bad, but red in this case is good because it's actually blood flow. And so this is pre-treatment, this top picture, and down here where you see a lot more red, which is a great sign, which means that there's more blood flow to the heart muscles themselves. That's after just 3 weeks of starting a plant-based diet. And then on the picture on the right, this picture, it shows the, I forgot, Dr. Austin put in all these great pointers. I didn't have to use my own pointer. There, okay. So, these are showing the distal left anterior descending artery, which for those of you that don't know, this is the artery, the coronary artery that's nicknamed the widowmaker, because when there's an occlusion there, it's often associated with a massive heart attack that usually results in death. So this is the pre-treatment. You'll see that it's really hard and shriveled up. There's not a lot of blood flow getting through that baby, but after 2.5 years of being on a plant-based diet, it's totally regained its normal shape and structure, which is pretty phenomenal. So not only is a plant-based diet effective at reversing diabetes, but this research suggests that it might be one of the safest diets long-term for diabetic patients because of its ability to prevent and reverse heart disease. So by this point, some of you might be wondering, well, what about a low-carb diet or a high-protein diet? What effect is that going to have on the coronary arteries long-term? And so that's what this study took a look at. We just saw the beneficial effects of a plant-based diet on the coronary arteries, and this study had similar results. You'll see the before and then after 1 year, increased blood flow by the more area of red. Compared to after a year, these patients actually showed 40 to 50% more plaque buildup after just 1 year of switching over to a high-protein diet. So they actually worsened their prognosis. They had less blood flow after 1 year of being on a high-protein diet. So going back to our patient, Lori, her husband, Dan, was also forced to adopt our treatment plan, even though he wasn't our patient because she does all the cooking in the house. And he wasn't a big fan of this at first. There was probably a lot of broccoli and kale. But he noticed that within a pretty short amount of time, he actually started feeling a lot better. And he has a diagnosis of cardiomyopathy, which is actually a disease of the heart muscle itself. And so that means that his heart isn't very effective at pumping blood. And so when he was on this diet, after just 3 months, he actually had lost over 20 pounds. He was able to reduce some of his heart medications, and he had improved ejection fraction, which is a measurement of how much blood is being pumped through the heart itself. And that is a pretty amazing thing to consider. There's not a lot of things that can, including medications, that are actually effective at improving ejection fraction. And his cardiologist actually didn't expect Dan to live much longer, And the therapist at one of his regular rehab appointments told him that she had never seen ejection fraction improve just through diet alone. So she was pretty excited for him, and he's feeling really, really good. And interestingly, just a side note, Dan also has MS and some other things going on. He's not a patient of ours, so I don't know the extensive history, but Lori told us that he used to be on quite a few opioids, and he's been able to decrease the number of opiate medications that he's on by tenfold. So that just speaks to how dramatic this diet is at treating both pain and inflammation as well. So there's a lot of diets that promote weight loss and improve blood glucose for our patients, but if we really want to first do no harm for our diabetics, we need to be choosing dietary interventions that not only treat their diabetes, but also simultaneously protect them against one of the leading causes of death, which is heart disease. So right now the literature says that a nutrient-dense plant-rich diet is probably the best way to do this. So there's a lot of literature and support for a plant-based diet in the literature. So if you are interested in any of this, come and talk to me afterwards, and I'd be happy to get you all of these references or some others. And there's also improvement in cancer, if any of you guys are interested in that topic as well. And then these are different resources that might be interesting for you or your patients. Dr. Furman's books are up here, and these are the ones that we utilized with Lori. So thank you so much for your time. What questions do you guys have? So she was seeing Dr. Messer for homeopathy, and
she started the diet. We were right before she started the diet, but as soon as she decided to switch over, she decided to just have those.
I thought I have something. All right. Almost done.
Our residents do such a good job with them. So that's all I'll talk for this evening. I'd like to add a couple more things real quick. We've recognized a lot of people this evening, Dr. Newman has. One of the group of people that I'd like to recognize real quick is every year we have 9 or so residents, and our residents go through a trial period of having to find cases pretty quick that they can either be involved in or that you've previously been finished up on, and then finding good ones that have publishability and presentability. And it's a trial, finding them. We go through a lot of screening process of cases that have been written up well, that are actually publishable. And so I'd really like to acknowledge all the physicians that have helped the residents in the past to find these cases and help them present them, this sort of thing. And I'd like to especially recognize Dr. Dang and Dr. Oskin, because they've been repeatedly really helping lots of our residents in the past and have assisted with lots of our cases. And I encourage all the other physicians as well to help us in the future. So if I can have an applause for them. And then in closing here, we always recognize at Research Night the best presenter, whether it be students in our other Research Night or our residents for their presentations tonight. And so we go through a lot of evaluating and actually I was texting all people involved in voting on this evening during the last talk here. And we all agreed that tonight, and we actually have a gift card a $30 gift card for Snooze Restaurant in Tempe for our top presentations. And today our top presenter is Dr. Moss. So with that finale, you guys are welcome to talk to the residents about any of the cases that they have. I don't know if you have any food left out there, if you're welcome to get more food if there is stuff out there. And if not, you can leave. So we hope to see you back in January for our next research night.